Hello, so this was a video that for a while I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it or not, but I feel sort of compelled to do it due to sort of all the stuff going on at the moment. So it might be, relevant and good for a lot of people, I don't know. So basically I thought I'd do a video kind of sharing what my current political thoughts are and things like that, just so people can't pretend I have certain views, that I don't really have. And also just because it's, it might encourage people who actually want to come on and have a good time about stuff. So basically, I'm pretty libertarian, but not, not in the sense of being an ANCAP kind of libertarian, of basically everything's personal property that, because obviously things like slavery are abhorrent. Now, I'm sure, like, in some forms of, anarcho-capitalism, owning slaves isn't allowed, because then it would violate other people's non-aggression principles and whatever else, but basically, I'm pretty boring in terms of politics, because I sit on the fence. The joke always is you get splinters in your arse, because there's very few things I feel really, really strongly about with politics. Basically, as in, I think there should be mostly free markets, but I think some taxation to pay for some socialised services is good. But I find that most, extremist ideologies, whether it ends up being, communism and fascism or Nazism, Nazism are pretty fucked up, things, because I think the problem is a lot of people think, because I've done videos before talking about, the horrible human rights atrocities that communist nations did, especially because that's not as politically correct to talk about what the commies did, compared to the Nazis. That meant that I must have been far right, no, I'm really not. It's, the way I like to think about stuff like that is if you were basically having a bullet put in your head, you wouldn't really care what the armband's, political sign was on it, would you? So in general, I think it seems very strange to me there's people who'd actually want an authoritarian system, because there's nothing to hold it accountable. If you vote away your rights and then, the government does bad things to you, that's sort of to be expected. I never really understand arguments of, I know it's always often portrayed in a sense of security, isn't it? That, there's terrorism, so we need some new security laws, all this sort of stuff. The main thing I wanted to already talk about was sort of a live and let live type attitude, because the lovely thing with YouTube is that you meet people from all over the world, talk to them, from loads of different countries, and all stuff like that. So, I can go on the YouTube analytics thing and I can see where everybody views my videos, and there's barely any countries in the world where I don't get at least some views per month. Obviously most views are concentrated in the US and the UK, but I get most African countries watching my videos, lots of South America, lots of bits of Asia. Obviously, I suppose if people learn English, maybe these are a good way of learning English, I don't know, probably not. But so that's nice, and I want the videos to be inclusive as possible. That was one of the reasons for ages I never really talked much about politics, because you don't want to really offend random people. But, part of the problem is you will get people come onto the videos and the comments or whatever, who then start basically really shoving their politics down other people's throat, and pissing off other people. And that's what really annoys me, because, you can actually have people watch your videos, and then because somebody's shoving their opinions down other people's throat, they're pissing off other people, The main example of that I've seen is really with anti-Semitism, where I've got a lot of Israeli viewers, obviously a lot of them are Jewish, or Jewish viewers, in the UK, US, wherever in the world, and then you'll get people literally, start using lots of racial slurs against them, or denying the Holocaust and that, whatever, in the comments, and that's why I'm sort of putting my foot down a bit more on this now, because it's getting to the stage where I think it, is very bad for other people, because, I want people to be able to come on these videos and have a good time no matter where they're from, are they gay, straight, it doesn't matter. White, black, they should be able to come on my videos and enjoy content about militaria and Geiger counters and stuff like that, not be brought into some stupid debate over, all of these sorts of things you see come up that have nothing to do with what the video's really about. People can't stop bringing it up. So that's basically more my rant over. I thought while I'm on this subject, because all the Black Lives Matter stuff's happening at the moment, I'll give my thoughts on that. I definitely think, was it George Floyd, the name of the guy that was killed? He was basically murdered, if the policeman shouldn't, for no reason, kneel on somebody's neck, basically killing him that way, and I know they are trying to charge the policeman, is it second-degree murder now? Again, I don't know all the legal stuff, if it should have been manslaughter, murder, whatever, but that was definitely wrong. The US certainly has a perception, from the UK at least, of, having cops that are very gun-ho, but I suppose they would be, wouldn't they? Because, anybody in the US could pull a gun on the cop, so I can understand why the cops may be acting quite a militarised way in the US. But again, people have the right to peacefully protest, and I think that's a good thing when people peacefully protest. You'll notice, because sadly there was some violence in London and a few other places recently. And my opinion always on protest and stuff like that is, if people are, you know, basically not smashing anything up, you know, not fighting anybody, but they show up in a crowd, that's fine. Now, obviously, with all the coronavirus stuff at the moment, you think, you know, is this going to risk a second wave, you know, and all this sort of stuff of the virus, but, you know, if people feel passionately enough to go out and protest, you know, even if there's a deadly virus out there, I think that says something about their strength of character. So, you know, I mean, I didn't support a statue being ripped down and thrown in the harbour in Bristol, wherever it was, but, you know, now, I don't think you should have statues up of people who, you know, made their money from human slavery, because that's a fucked up thing, you know. But I think ideally with a statue like that, it should have been taken down and put in a museum. You know, it's not, you shouldn't, again, like, that's where it gets complicated, isn't it? But I certainly don't agree with people smashing stuff up, because then it turns more into rioting, you know, rather than actual peaceful protesting. And when people peacefully protest, I always kind of think, you know, I can get their message. It's a big show of people turning out, you know, to make their voice heard. Whereas when obviously you get violent protests, it can do a lot to turn people against whatever cause it is. But what I have been doing to try and at least educate myself is listening to a lot of stuff recently with people phoning in the UK on sort of stuff like LBC, talking about their experiences of racism and, you know, stuff like that. Just because I think, obviously, being white, it's not very easy for me to empathise in a lot of ways. Especially if it's very covert racism, you know. I'm sure we'd all know what overt racism was if we saw it, but like a lot of people were saying, there was, you know, covert racism where, you know, when you think about it, you think, oh yeah, that is a really shitty thing to have to put up with. You know, and I'll try and make sure I don't do certain things that might come across, you know, as being racist. You know, there's that's all, you know, but it's just, I think, a very interesting thing to do, and, you know, I think everybody owes it to other people, no matter what skin colour, race it is. Just do a bit of basic research, you know, so you don't end up making really, really ignorant statements. I'm sure I'm guilty of that, but, you know. Anyway, so, that's this video over. I'm pretty sure lots of people can call me a cuck and a simp and whatever weird alt-right words they want to call me, you know. But here's the problem, because, you know, I don't have extremist views of either degree, the far left and the far right will probably hate you. Because, you know, it's just because communism is bad doesn't mean fascism is good, you know, or vice versa. I think, in all honesty, it'd be better if we have a very good democratically, you know, governments that can be held to account, especially when they do bad things. Governments need to be held for account, you know. But, you know, anyway, that's my thoughts. But I wanted to do this video just because I wanted to make it clear to people that watch my videos, you know, from whatever different backgrounds, that I have nothing against them, and I don't really want these comment sections on the videos, or, you know, people chatting in the streams or whatever, to turn it into, you know, essentially a virtual lynch mob, because, you know, can't people just come on videos like this to enjoy the content, you know, of Geiger counters or gas masks, not, oh, let's talk bad about this country or this group of people, or, you know, all that sort of stuff, because, you know, it's not relevant, is it? And I think it shows more ignorance of the people making those sort of comments than, you know, the people they're directing them towards, in all honesty.